happy, joy, joy. That's our sermon for today. How many recognize where that phrase comes from? Happy, happy, joy, joy. I tell you, there's a culture that I have not been able to get you guys to recognize, okay? So happy, happy, joy, joy. You see that I crossed out happy, happy, and we'll get to that point here through the sermon. So no, it is not the Ren and Stimpy happy, happy, joy, joy song. Anybody recognize this crew? Oh, some of them. Okay, good. All right. That is a chihuahua and a cat, by the way, if you did not know that. Okay. All right, so we are not doing Ren and Stimpy. You might find that more entertaining than my sermons, but I hope not. So we're going to read the passage. We're beyond the 5th verse of 1 Peter chapter 1. And so now we're going to jump into verse 6, and we're going to read through verse 12. So 1 Peter 1, starting in verse 6, it says, "In this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while, if need be, you have been grieved by various trials, that the genuineness of your faith, being much more precious than gold that perishes, though it is tested by fire, may be found to praise, honor, and glory at the revelation of Jesus Christ, whom having not seen you love. Though now you do not see him, yet believing, you rejoice with joy inexpressible and full of glory, receiving the end of your faith, the salvation of your souls. Of this salvation the prophets have inquired and searched carefully, who prophesied of the grace that would come to you, searching what manner of time the Spirit of Christ who was in them was indicating when he testified beforehand the sufferings of Christ and the glories that would follow. To them it was revealed that not to themselves but to us they were ministering the things which now have been reported to you through those who have preached the gospel to you by the Holy Spirit sent from heaven, things which angels desire to look into." Okay, so before you think I'm covering all of that today, we're not. We're going to go up to verse 12, I think it is, or 10. But we're going to cover the first part of that. And as a reminder from the last few weeks, last week I wanted to remind you the simple definition of grace, which is often described as getting what you do not deserve, compared to mercy, which is not getting what you do deserve, okay? And those work hand in hand. They're like God's mercy and God's grace. And we saw that in the opening of the chapter, and God, according to his abundant mercy, and grace and peace be multiplied. So we saw that in the beginning of Peter saying grace and mercy. So it's important that we have an understanding of the things we're going through is because of God's grace and because of his mercy. Okay, and so I want to go over the so what. If you've already read it, you can maybe understand why happy, happy was crossed out in the title. It says, "The struggles we go through in life are the very things that try our faith. When we are put to the fire, it gives us the opportunity to produce fruit, bringing glory to Jesus Christ." Okay, so let's jump right in, and I want to read verse 6. It's, "In this you greatly rejoice, though now." So what is in this? You're going to ask. Maybe you won't. If you paid attention for the past few weeks, you don't have to ask, right? No. Okay. In this, we have a living hope. We found out a living hope. It's not something just like, I kind of hope this happens or hope that, or I hope this. It's a living hope. It is something that we live day in and day out because we have an expectation of what's going to happen with our salvation. Our inheritance is salvation. Our inheritance is secure and is incorruptible, undefiled, and doesn't fade. And it's secure by the power of God. We are kept by God's power via our faith in salvation, which will be fully revealed in the end. What we see Peter talking about, we're going to see a little bit of an undertone of Peter relating to the eternal. And we're going to see that because there's a verse part of this passage that used to bug me that we'll get to, is that Peter's focus is on the eternal, and that's why we need to look at, he's constantly saying that salvation which will be revealed in the end. Okay? And so you greatly rejoice. And guess what? I'm going to try to show you a couple of the fruits of the Spirit, because I want to see how we can apply the things that we're supposed to have in our lives, the fruit of the Spirit, and how it relates to this very passage we're reading today so that we can combine them together. So greatly rejoice. I say it is the fruit of the Spirit, which is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. I have to read it every time because I mix my King James Version and New King James Version together and it throws me off. So anyway, right there, joy. Joy is what we should have. Joy is not happy. Happy is momentary. It's based on emotion. It's based on the time and place that you are at. But joy is a lifestyle, okay? And so you're going to say, Mike, that says rejoice. That doesn't say joy. But let's look at what it means to rejoice when we see it in the Bible, right? Joy is a deep-seated internal state of gladness and delight, often viewed as what? A fruit of the Spirit. While to rejoice is the active, conscious choice to celebrate or express that joy even during difficult circumstances. That's joy. That's not happy, that's joy. It's a fruit of the Spirit, and it's our opportunity to express the fruit of the Spirit even in difficult circumstances. Why is it important? I'm going to digress a little bit, but why is that so important as we go through this? Is because we need to recognize that, yes, people see our lives, and our lives are a witness to them, but when they see it, we should take the opportunity to say why we're being this way, why we're okay, why it's not the end of the world, and bring God into the conversation instead of making sure they assume that they know why you are so joyous. Okay? And so continuing on, it says, for a little while, if need be. Guess what? That's another fruit of the Spirit. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, like we covered, peace, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. If you can't pick it up, it's patience right there, long-suffering. I couldn't make that big enough in long-suffering and fit it there. So long-suffering, patience, basically the same thing. Okay? And so this patience is he's saying for a little while if need be. He's saying you need to be patient. You need to practice patience. I know the same old thing. I'm not going to pray for patience because I know God to give it to me. Well, guess what? If you're practicing your Christianity, God's going to give it to you whether you ask Him for it or not. Okay? So patience. And I had this I almost brought it. I was going to bring a string cheese. How many like string cheese? All right? They come in that little. How many people eat it the proper way? Does anybody know what the proper way? Thank you very much. There's a proper way. Okay, you peel it in nice slow bits and take your time. And it drives our dogs crazy when I do that because they're waiting for the last bite. But you pull it straight. I have to confess, there's one person in here that doesn't always eat it right. I guess she's just not patient enough. And it just boggles the mind. I think she needs this. I get her the cheddar cheese sticks because then she's not breaking the rules. Okay. But anyway, she's back, and now I have to pick on her, right? Okay, so that's patience. This slow, deliberate act to practice patience, to be patient, okay? And why? It says, because why do you need be? You have been grieved by various trials. Now we're going to jump somewhere else in the Bible that ties this up. And because who wrote Galatians? Paul, right? So Paul tells us the fruit of the Spirit. Peter here is telling us that for a little while, you have been grieved by various trials. Now we even have yet another apostle. James says in James 1, 2, and 3, many of you recognize this one as well. My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. Right there, joy. Count it all joy. Now, it doesn't mean you have to enjoy the circumstance you're in. It means to be joyful despite the circumstance you're in. For the joy that was set before him, Christ endured the cross. He didn't like it. I know some people try to say it's like, well, he knew it was going to make him happy in the end. I don't believe that. I believe that because he knew the joy that he was going to realize of salvation for those he loved, all of us, that's what he was holding on to when he went through something he didn't like. Okay? And so joy. And then, looky there, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. 2 fruits of the Spirit again. Okay? And not, okay, for you parents and those people that think that you could rewrite this, okay, I got to see if I can explain this. Patient and patience is 2 different things, okay? So you are not fallen to various trials and you know that the testing produces inpatients in the hospital. That's not the right interpretation, okay? So make sure you recognize it's CE, not TS. Patience, okay? And then it says that the genuineness of your faith, the genuineness of your faith. This is a idea that is proven genuineness. So when you look at the Greek word, it's proven. It's not just genuine. It means you have tested it. And the whole idea of testing is also this idea of various trials, is this idea of proving or purifying like silver. Okay, we saw something in young adults. I don't know if any of them here gave a good example of this. Is the silversmiths back then would heat up the silver and then heat it up really a lot and then pull the slag off of it, and they knew it was pure when they could see their reflection in the melted silver. Okay, I really like that, and that's why I'm using his example, because it's like God wants to see his reflection in us. We should want God to see his reflection in us, and so I like that visual. Okay, and again, my brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your what? Faith. Faith produces patience. Okay, guess what? I'm going to show you another verse. Do you think you know what it is? The fruit of the Spirit. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness or faith, gentleness, self-control. So faith, faithfulness, it's all the same idea. You're full of faith, okay? Faithfulness. You practice and you do faith, okay? And so that is faith. Yet another fruit of the Spirit. So that's where I'm saying in the so what, that these trials that we go through, they produce fruit. You're wondering, well, I don't know, how do I do love, joy, peace, long suffering? How do I, we sometimes get stuck on the how when we need to recognize when we see it, the how is right here. The trials we're going through, we be joyful because we're faithful to God, right? And it's going to be, we're going to have patience, and the faithfulness, believing in God, is going to generate patience, because sometimes you're going, okay, God, where are you? I know you're there, God, where are you? And we're practicing patience because does God ever answer your prayers on your timeline? Ever? I don't think so. Okay, right? And so that's patience while we wait for God's will, and that's what we believe in. That's the faith we have, and it's producing the patience. Okay, so here we go. Being much more precious than gold that perishes. It bugged me, as I'm scientifically minded, some of you know that, is that how is it that gold perishes? That's the one thing. And believe it or not, I looked it up on the internet. There is technically a way to make gold perish, but it's all beyond Peter's time, right? Before they figured it out. But look at this, is that if gold can perish, it can be damaged or lost. It's funny because this is AI. This is an AI-generated explanation of how can gold be perished. Okay? And it's just chemical dissolution, mercury amalgamation, and nuclear transmutation. Nothing that Peter had in his timeline, okay? And so he is looking at the eternal when he is saying that gold can perish, because this earth shall pass away and there'll be a new heaven and a new earth. So Peter's trying to say, gold, you think gold's all that in a bag of chips? He says, no, it's going to perish, okay? And so it's more precious, that the genuineness, our faith, is much more precious than gold. And it continues on saying that the genuineness of our faith, faith, is tested by fire, may be found to praise, honor, and glory at the revelation of Jesus Christ. That's where I'm talking about we bring praise and honor and glory to Christ. And how are we doing it? That revelation of Jesus Christ. Remember, we've talked about the mystery and the revelation. The mystery is a truth before unknown, and revelation is that truth exposed to us so we can understand it. The mystery of what God's plan is, what God's doing. And when we are tested by fire and we practice our faith, which includes having patience, which means we should be joyful because of the patience that we're gaining from the faith that we're doing, right? All three of those tie hand in hand, and it produces fruit in us. And so the revelation of Jesus Christ. And what's the end result? I'm going the wrong way. The end result, receiving the end of your faith, the salvation of your souls. That is what we're producing. That is the thing that the glory and honor, our unique genuineness of our faith is to produce the glory, honor, and praise through the fruit that we're practicing of the revelation of Jesus Christ. And what? The end of your faith, the salvation of your... There is an end to our faith. And that's why I'm saying Peter's got an eternal mindset here. Because our faith is going to eventually be real. Because if we're still having faith in something or a hope in something, then we haven't seen what that looks like. And we're going to see that next week on the prophets that foretold about Jesus coming. And so we're going to see how when our faith comes to completion, heaven... The salvation of our soul, salvation is more than just this earthly thing. It's a thing eternal. It's heaven. And so that's why at the end of our faith, we will see the salvation of our souls. Okay. What I wanted to show you is that each of these things in this verse, let me go there. I want to read this verse when I can see it because I don't have it memorized. And I really want this part to sink in. Because we're talking about the fruit that we are developing in the Spirit, right? And so it says in 1 Peter chapter 1, and we're down to verse 9, or 10, no, sorry, 8. Whom having not seen faithfulness, you love, which by the way is another fruit of the Spirit. It's the first one. So if you go to memorize the fruit of the Spirit, you're going to learn love first. Okay? And it says, through now, though you do not see him, again, faithfulness, right? And though now, patience, right? Because we don't see him, yet believing, faithfulness, you rejoice, joy, with joy inexpressible and full of glory. So, what we see here is the joy that you saw that I finished with, and we had believing as well, faithfulness. So you see how all these times, no you can't because it's hidden behind this slide. We see how you need to learn to see the fruit that you're trying to develop. And you see that when you start reading and recognizing the similarity. I know it's similarity of words and it's not the same thing, but it's based on the fruit. It's based on the things we should be doing. Okay? And so then it's you rejoice with joy. And that joy, here's the whole Ren and Stimpy thing. Joy. It's inexpressible and full of glory. Okay? Inexpressible, this means, I like Greek because it's kind of logical. And there's alpha, when you put an alpha character, alpha, beta, sigma, all that stuff. When you put an alpha character with a word, it makes that word null and void. So it's really saying here, expressible, it's the direct opposite of expressible. Okay? It's inexpressible. I know that probably means the same thing to you in English, but it's not a partial thing. It's either it is or it isn't in the Greek. And so it's inexpressible, this joy we have. We have struggle. You see me. I struggle all the time to find the words to say this stuff, right? Okay? And so it's joy inexpressible and full of glory. So what we need to do is we need to keep in mind, we obey, going all the way back to verse 2, when we talked about how important is obey. It was the peace. We had the Trinity mentioned in verse 2, the Father that through his foreknowledge by the sanctification of the Spirit, through the obedience and sprinkling of the blood of Christ. The only thing in that mixture that we can do is obey. That's our peace, okay? And so with that, part of this obeying, it should be simple. I know it's not. It's easier said than done. But when you recognize what God has done for us, His grace and His mercy, we should be like, no duh, we greatly rejoice even in life's struggles. Okay? It should just click. It should just be there because we know this life is it is transient. We're not here forever. We're going to be going to heaven. And then we produce some fruit. Because while we're practicing all that, we're producing the fruit of the Spirit. Not all of them. There's a whole Bible full of ways to practice some of the other ones, but we produce the fruit of the Spirit. When we struggle, well, it brings praise, honor, and glory. And what does it bring praise, honor, and glory? To the truth of Jesus Christ. The revelation, a mystery, a truth that was priorly hidden, has been revealed as a truth, and is to the truth of who Jesus Christ is. So what? We're to that. The struggles we go through in life are the very things that try our faith. I've said it before, we tend not to learn much on a mountaintop experience. Right? We're too full, we're rejoicing, but that's not a true test of our joy in the Lord, our joy in the Spirit, right? Because we're up there, we're like, woohoo, God, you showed up. All right. Yeah? And then all of a sudden, boom, you think He's like, God, where'd you go? Right? Sometimes He might be behind you because you went the wrong direction. But He's like, where'd you go? Okay? That's when you develop joy. That's when you recognize that God is still in your life and that God still has a plan for you. So when we are put to the fire, when we are tried, when we are proven, when the garbage gets taken off, like when we, that whole idea of that melting silver and purifying silver, is they're taking the junk out. When they heat it up and it boils to the top, they scoop that out and throw it out. That's the junk. That's not worth nothing. Okay? Until what remains is pure and complete. And it gives us the opportunity to produce fruit, bringing glory to Jesus Christ. Okay, and the point to ponder, what was the last struggle you fought well? What fruit did it produce? There's this realization I came, and Josie and I have talked about it. I don't know if she thought up the idea first or if I did, is that there's this concept that I think is true, is that we go through things, and there's ways we can go through them that God still us bring it through, but are you kicking and screaming while you're doing it, or are you doing it with patience, with joy, and with faith that God has a plan for you? How well we do those struggles is how well the fruit we produce is, right? So what is a struggle that you fight? And you could even go the opposite. What is a struggle that you didn't fight so well, and how did it go? Did it produce fruit in you? You know, because sometimes God knows where we're at. So it's like, don't go thinking everything you go through was a failure, and don't think everything you went through was success, okay? Because it's usually somewhere in between. We always can improve, okay? So what was the last struggle you fought well, and what fruit did it produce in you? And again, what I want to bring this point out is that this fruit should be displayed. People should see this fruit in our lives. That's the intent, that we're rejoicing even in the time of struggle, right? We're being patient even though we want to hurry up this thing or that or the other. And people see, because sometimes you can be in the workplace and you're practicing patience that everybody else is not. It's a combined thing that you all want on the workplace. And God's, no, you're like, come on, God. And you're calm, cool, you got a good attitude. You're still not saying bad things about your boss behind your back because all these other guys are. They're going to see the difference. And when they see the difference, boom, that's your opportunity to present them. Well, I got God in my life, and this thing and this job, just, so what? I got better things in store for me. And so use these things when people recognize that you're succeeding in your struggles and in your trials and you're producing fruit, to let them know why, how, what for. You know, share the gospel with them, bring God into the conversation. And then for next week, continue memorizing John 3:16 through 18. And then read James chapters 1 and 2. A couple of good chapters. There's some hard-hitting punches in there. But balance it out. I shouldn't say but. And balance it out with the body of Scripture. Okay? Because there is some hard-hitting stuff in there. Don't hang a doctrine on one verse in James or in any part of the Bible. Take the whole thing and combine it together. So read James chapters 1 and 2.